Okay.
Hello everybody and welcome to June in July, our session of questions for our garment makers, and it's lovely to see you all on this beautiful summer evening here in Yorkshire. We've got some really good questions. We've got some quite technical questions this evening, so you're going to keep me on my toes, which is where I should always be because I am not very tall. So we've got about, I think, 11 or 12 really good questions, which is quite a lot for garment makers, which is great. And I have something to show you and explain, a little project that I had been working on for the last few months actually, really. But I am going to start by handing you over to David so that he can welcome you and just check that you can see and hear us.
Okay, hi everybody. So this week, well in fact not this week, last week Rachel was first on apparently. Her comment has gone, it was there about 10 minutes ago. But Rachel said that she was first in the queue, waiting for us last Thursday. So sorry about that, Rachel. Susan Jenkins was first to say hello, almost as usual. That's quite common for Susan in her. Oh, not in her motorhome, but in sunny Derbyshire. Jane Petley Jones from Cumbria, Kimberly Hum from Chattanooga, Deb from Rhode Island, Hamish Lyd McKinley from Aberdeenshire. I don't think we've seen you on before. I don't remember seeing you anyway. Debbie Wisdom, Jill Buckley, Lynn Grant. So lots of people. Hopefully you can see us and hear us, and we are ready to get cracking.
So what do we always start with? Well, the question always is, where is Peter to do the pulling out of the numbers for our prize draw? He is, as he was on Tuesday, at the allotment picking fruit, so he will no doubt appear later, which means I'm going to do the job of picking the numbers out. But today, for two lucky winners, I have a little kind of goodie bag of gifts for you this time. So I have got, in each of the two prizes, David is just adjusting the camera so that you can see, I've got some really beautiful cross-stitch trim, which is on a black cotton background. So it's a strip of fabric. The edges have been tucked under, the raw edges are tucked under and stitched, and it's got a lovely kind of ethnic cross-stitch design. There is 3 meters. One person is going to get orange and purple, and the other person is going to get orange and blue. Would be really lovely on the hem of a skirt, or to perhaps just really embellish a bag or something like that. It could go across the yoke on the back of a jacket, on a sleeve, all kinds of things. And 3 meters of each of those is quite a nice chunk to do plenty with. And then I have an embroidery hoop, which you can use under your sewing machine if you want to do a bit of little bit of free motion work or something, embellishment on a garment, but of course you can use it for some handwork. Each person gets 2 threads, so 2 polyester threads, and a packet of tulip high-class needles, hand sewing needles. So pretty good prize, I think, this week. So 2 numbers out of my magic bag, which I will pass over to David, and then he, along with all the many other things that he has to do, will find out who our lucky winners are. So there you go, David. So the advantage of being down here in the kitchen is that the table is much narrower than the studio table, and I can actually reach across and pass those to David without any danger of them getting lost anywhere. So I hope you are excited, and I think we can start with question number 1.
Okay, so I'm also note that we're in the kitchen and the light's coming through the window and disappearing behind the house next door. So it's probably going to get darker and darker as we go on. I will try to adjust the camera because it doesn't adjust automatically. But if you can't see Philippa, then let me know, and I will turn the camera or the lights up or something. Okay, the first question is from Jenny, and we have a picture that goes with this. Jenny says she has a fitting query. She made her kimono dressing gown a couple of years ago after watching the lesson. So let me see if I think we're ready to go with that. Oh no, that's the pattern that she used. Let's come back to me. I'll put it up in a second. So she says, I used the Pattern House Kimono jacket pattern. I lengthened the pattern to utilise all of the fabric, added pockets, used French seams throughout, top stitched the neck and front band. So well done, Jenny. It has a fitting problem on my back that recurs on other garments. The problems are the appearance of a crease of fabric immediately below the neck at the back and the cut of the garment being too close to my neck. I suspect it's because I've got narrow shoulders, rounded back, forward shoulders, and maybe a thicker neck. From the pictures, I can't see any of those, to be honest, Jenny.
I am chuckling away, Jenny. You have not got a thick neck. You look like you've got a swan-like, elegant neck. Don't do yourself a disservice there.
So I'm going to bow out. Let Philippa give you what you need to do, and I will pop the picture up as soon as I find it.
Well, what Jenny says, where does she say it? I have a fitting query. No surprise there. I mean, Jenny has come and done several classes in person with me over the years, and she is absolutely the most, what should I say about this? She is more careful on her fitting than anybody else that I have ever taught. She wants to get things absolutely perfect, which is no bad thing at all. But a kimono is traditionally cut from rectangles of fabric. So if you think back to kind of hand woven fabric that was woven in quite a narrow width, it utilized all the fabric without cutting into it. So it is in that sense quite a boxy shape, but you can make it softer and more drapey by using a softer, more fluid fabric. And I have to say, Jenny, it looks absolutely lovely. It's really bright and colourful and set off very nicely in your garden there with the roses behind you. So that is really nice. So now I would say that Jenny and I have a similar fitting consideration that we need to make, because I also get a similar problem where I will get a little crease riding up towards the back of my neck, and it is because I am a little bit round shoulders, and Jenny says the same thing. And if you're a little bit round shouldered, we're going to talk about the full bust adjustment, but if you are round shouldered, you need a little bit of extra fabric in the horizontal and in the vertical plane. And what the garment is trying to do is it's trying to find a bit more fabric to accommodate that slight roundness. And so it's going to ride up, because it's going to get that extra fabric from lower down, and it's going to ride up and it's going to create that little creasing pleaty effect on the back. So I mean, Jenny's really pretty much an expert on her fitting, so she absolutely really knows that. I think she's really just asking for my kind of reassurance on that, really. So the only way that she's really going to be able to address that on this garment is to put a centre back seam, because what she needs to do is on the centre back seam at the place where the extra kind of fabric is needed, she's going to slash from the centre back out towards the armhole seam, and she's going to open up like a little wedge of extra fabric there. We do have that particular alteration in the index, so when you go to the home page and go to the index, you'll be able to find that, and it's all explained in detail. So that little bit of fabric is needed, but once you've taken that half back and the centre back and you've slashed into it, you have a slightly curved shape to the upper back across the back of the shoulders there, and so you can't place that on a fold. You could place it on a fold where you'd have to sew some darts, wouldn't you, to create that extra fullness. So you would have to either dart it or put that centre back seam in, which is not traditionally what you get with a kimono. But if that's the fit that you want, then yes, that is what you are going to have to do. Now, I've looked very carefully at your pattern, because you did a really good job of sending a side-on view. It's a little hard to tell with the actual print of the fabric because it's got lots of lines in it, but it looks to me as though the shoulder line is pretty much in place there, really. So you suggest, where are we? narrow shoulders, rounded back, forward shoulders, and maybe a thicker neck. I love that thicker neck thing, honestly. So it doesn't look to me that seam is particularly in the wrong place. And I don't think narrow shoulders, if you actually have got narrow shoulders, is an issue with the kimono style garment, because the sleeve seam comes into the upper arm anyway, doesn't it? It doesn't sit as it would if it was a fitted armhole, so it's going to come down anyway. So if your shoulders are a little bit narrow, I don't actually think that's an issue at all. So I think you need to do that back adjustment. But what I would also say to you is, if you want to reduce the creasing of the band on your neck, I think that simply is happening because it's quite a wide band, isn't it? So what is happening is, if you look at the photos, there's a little pleat at either side of the band, the neck here, and that's because it's quite a wide band and it's kind of riding up on your neck and it's getting sort of creased and pushed down because of that width. And so a way to deal with that would be to reduce the width of the band. Now you could reduce it all the way around, or you could shape it slightly, so you could reduce it at the kind of back neck and into the front of the neck, but then it could increase in width if you wanted. You could even make it quite a definite increase, so that at the centre back neck it was quite narrow, but as it came down the front and got towards the hem, it could actually become quite a lot wider, and you could make that a design feature. So those are my suggestions with that. If you, just another little point on that before we move on, if you do have rounded shoulders and they're more pronounced than both Jenny and I have got, what happens is you need more and more fabric in the back, and you need to reduce the amount of fabric in the front, because as you become more round shouldered, you get an excess of fabric here. And we also explain how to deal with that in the class as well, so you'll be able to find that. I think it is actually in the same part of the class. So both of those things do go hand in hand, and as I say, the more round shouldered you get, the more fabric you do get coming towards the sort of pinched up at the front there, because you simply don't need all of that. So Jenny, you knew it all really. You wanted a bit of reassurance, but we don't mind in the slightest, because it's a gorgeous garment. We're really happy to see it, and I absolutely know that version number 2 will be another chalk up, another level up than this one, and we would really like to see that when you've got it done. And any comments you've got about what you did would be really useful. So thank you.
Thank you there. Okay, the next question is from Kathy, and Kathy says, when I add to a waist, how much do I add for ease at the waist? And she says, I did make some summer trousers in a stretch cotton. She's just got round to wearing them this year, and within a very short time they became loose. What can I do about that? So a lot of people would love for their clothes to get looser. So Kathy, she says she's got a cylindrical shape now, no waist or hips to speak of. Maybe there's a design that would suit my shapeless figure. I'm going to remake everything to consolidate my learning. You've given me the push I needed. Thank you, Philippa. And that's from Kathy. So what do we think, Philippa?
Well, I think the second question, so both of you are not giving yourselves the credit you deserve, and you're kind of highlighting what you feel are your flaws to your figure. I mean, never say anything like that. People won't notice. So never, whenever you make a mistake on anything, just keep quiet about it unless somebody does notice. So you're not really doing yourself any justice by saying that. I'm sure you look absolutely lovely. Now, the summer trousers that you made, I don't know what the style was, I don't know what the fabric was, I don't know whether it was an elasticated waist, whether it had a waistband, whether it had a facing at the waist. So it's a little bit hard for me to say what can you do about them, because I don't know what they're like, okay? I mean, there are two things that could have happened here. So you may have lost weight between making them last year or whenever you made them, but it may be that the stretchy fabric kind of gave in wear. And we all know that, because when you wash your jeans and you put your jeans on, they're quite snug, aren't they? And then when you've had them on for a little while, because of the twill weave, and sometimes they have a bit of lycra elastane in them, they get more comfortable and softer. So maybe it is that. So without knowing the style, I can't can't advise on any alterations that you might make, but it might be that just putting them in the wash might do the trick. Like your jeans, every time you wash your jeans, they tighten up. I mean, it might, I don't know whether you pre-wash the fabric or not, whether there's any shrinkage in that, whether you've got a long hem on them. You could, if it was cotton, you could put it in quite a, unpick the hem, put it in quite a long hot wash, and then they would shrink maybe a little bit, and then you could re-hem them. I'm really not sure on that, so I'm sorry not to be able to kind of define what the trousers actually are. In terms of your cylindrical shape, in your wardrobe you have got trousers that you know work well for you, and that is what you want to kind of replicate, really. So, you know, get 2 or 3 4 pairs of trousers out of your wardrobe, stand in front of a full length mirror, try them on, see which ones look best, and then you'll know the kind of thing that you need to be working towards. And then in terms of how much ease should you add on the waist, I would say between 1 and 2 inches. Again, it depends on the style and the fabric and how firm the fabric is, you know, where the trousers actually sit. Do they sit on the waist? Are they a little bit lower? That kind of thing. But again, what I'm going to suggest you do when you try those trousers on that you've already got, measure your waist and measure the actual waist of the trousers, and the ones that feel most comfortable to you in wear, you'll be able to see what the difference is, and I imagine it'll be between 1 and 2 inches. So Kathy, thank you for your kind words, and I'm sorry not to be more specific on that, but with the information that you give me, that is my best answer for you. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Sue Jenkins, and Sue says, a close friend has asked me to make him a smart, as in suit, jacket. Sue's problem is that he is a wheelchair user, and she wants to know how she should go about shortening the front so that it is still smart. And also wondering, should she lengthen the back, because he's obviously going to be sitting down all of the time that he's wearing it. So Philippa, shortening the front, lengthening the back, what do we need to do?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that need investigating on this, Sue. I mean, first of all, making a smart jacket is a big project for anybody, and making that for somebody in a wheelchair is really is going to be quite the thing. I mean, we don't know anything about this gentleman, so I mean, I don't know whether he's permanently in a wheelchair or whether he just uses a wheelchair sometimes, and sometimes he is mobile. I mean, I don't know how the reason for him being in a wheelchair and what he is able to do, so whether he can support his weight or whether he also has, you know, round shoulders, or his posture is a little bit slumped, and so on. So all of those questions need addressing, really, because that would really affect the jacket that I was making and how I was going to make it. But what I also think is quite important to know is this for a one-off occasion? Is this something that he wants to wear on a number of occasions? How formal does it have to be? Can it be a little bit informal? Does it need to be very tailored, and so on? Because all of those questions would affect the decisions on what I was going to make. So again, it is quite a hard one for me to answer. I mean, the fabric can also make a difference as well. Excuse me. So I think it would be a really good thing to start off with some of the garments that the gentleman already has in his wardrobe. So again, we don't know how long he's been in a wheelchair, whether he's got any suit jackets or smart jackets that he could try on, that you could see where the issue actually was. I mean, if he has a fairly upright posture, then you shouldn't need to deviate too much from a traditional jacket pattern. But if his posture is more rounded, then again, the class that we just the alteration that we just mentioned to Jenny would be an ideal starting point for you to deal with that. I mean, if you get him to put a jacket on and see what it's like in the chair, see where the length comes, see where you think a good length is going to be, it is unlikely that it's going to be worn fastened, because I think when you sat down, you know, gentlemen tend to unbutton their jackets anyway. it may be. I mean, I don't know whether it's one occasion or several occasions, but there are other ways of kind of smartening yourself up, aren't there? So it may be that a kind of smart tailored jacket isn't really the way to go, but what about making a really fantastic smart waistcoat that could be worn with a lovely tie and a collar, and then maybe a softer jacket on top of that?
Sue's given us a little bit more information in the comments. He's permanently in a wheelchair and he's a pastor at her local church, so he will be wearing it regularly, she says.
Right, okay. And so he's not wearing a cassock or any kind of ecclesiastical clothing. Okay, maybe she could tell us that as well, because so if it is for wearing in church, I mean, I think it's a really hard job to kind of make that look really, really great. And I think that you maybe have the opportunity to look at other ways of giving him something that is kind of in keeping with his role within the church, but gives him an opportunity to really speak in terms of what he's wearing. So something like a waistcoat with a with some kind of semi-formal jacket, or maybe some kind of amazing trim or something like that. I mean, I think that there's a whole kind of information gathering there that is needed before I can help you with that more specifically. So I would really like you to go and kind of almost give yourself a little project of really finding out more about when he's going to wear it, what he feels comfortable in, is he open to any other possibilities, and start from there. And I think it's a really great opportunity to give this gentleman a really individual kind of look that would really help him to kind of be more of the person that he is within the church, if that doesn't sound rude. It's not meant to in any way. So perhaps we could have a bit more information and then we can have another chat about this, Sue, because I do think it is a huge kind of complex issue that could be addressed in several ways.
Okay, thank you. So Sue, she just said definitely no cassock. I'm assuming he's a free church pastor, not in one of the Anglican or Catholic. Sarah Runnacles has suggested All Access Sewing by Rebecca Cole is a good book for sewing for people with disabilities. That might be a good lead for you from Sarah Runnacles, who quite often has some good ideas and some good leads. So
she always has good ideas, not just often. She's a star.
Okay, so let me pull the next question up. So the next question is from Debbie. Now, Debbie, good question. One, I don't think we've had this one before. Debbie has bought some lovely double-sided reversible quilted fabric to make the Love Notions Oakley vest. The Love Notions Oakley vest view B with the zipper, the collar and patch pockets, and she wants to make it reversible with the zipper and the collar and the patch pockets. The patch pockets should be straightforward, she says, and I know I'll need a reversible open-ended zip, but the collar and the side seams have got her puzzled. Can Philippa advise on how to sew the side seams and collar to ensure that they look good on both sides? The pattern suggests the collar can be bound, so if I did that, would it still sit correctly on both sides of the gilet? The patch pockets and arms are bound with bias binding, so they should be okay on both sides. We do have a picture of this. I will hand back to Philippa and hopefully I've got the right picture teed up.
So, thank you. So Debbie, I had a look in your library to see which classes you had and what you had watched, and you have watched 23% of the patchwork jacket class. So you need to watch the remaining 77% of that class. And it's a while since you've looked at it. It's a couple of years. It's frightening, isn't it? It is frightening what we can find out about what you've watched. But there is a lot of information there. But I do have, I'm just going to grab them. Bear with me. I do have a couple of things to say. So it is really pretty straightforward, and I know that the patchwork jacket class is a jacket with sleeves, and it is slightly different, but it's got lots of pertinent points on that. But I have shown this particular bought jacket in the past, but it has patch pockets, so there is a patch pocket sewn on both sides, but the patch pocket on one side is fractionally smaller than the patch pocket on the other side, and so you don't actually see the stitching. So if you want to alter the size of your patch pockets and sew the slightly smaller one on first and then sew the other one, that's a good way of dealing with that, and you're not going to catch one pocket when you sew this second pocket on, are you? So that is a little thing on that one. And then if I bring in the jacket from the class, now the actual seams on the inside of this one, I have covered them on one side with a contrasting strip of fabric, which actually ties in really beautifully with the contrasting binding. So that is something that is explained in detail in the class, and that's a feature that you'll be able to use if you want to. The binding just goes on in the same way that you would bind a quilt. So you can stitch it on from the right side, and then you can hand finish it on the wrong side, or alternatively you can do what I do in the piping and binding class version 2 if you're a member of our quilt making. I'm pretty sure you are actually, Debbie, and you can machine it on, so machine it on and then finish it by machine. You don't have to do any hand sewing with it. So with your particular design, what happens is you will put the collar on first, but the outer edge of the collar will be raw in the same way as the front and the lower edge will be, and you will just continue your binding all the way around it. So again, if you look at that class, it will explain how to do the mitre at the top of the collar, which you have got on your particular pattern there. So all that information is there for you, so do tap into that and it will all make perfect sense to you. So I think you're going to have really good success with it. You'll have a lovely reversible garment that will have pockets on both sides, and you can't go wrong with a pocket, and we look forward to seeing it.
Thank you. Okay, so Sarah Runnicle, just on the previous question, Sarah Runnicle says she's an occupational therapist, so that's why she knows so much about sewing for people in wheelchairs. Okay, the next question is from Hilary Plowman in York, and Hilary says, I'm planning to make a jumpsuit out of a man-made crinkle fabric. Is that a technical term, Philippa? How should I press the seams on crinkle fabric? Thank you. And that's from Hilary Plowman in York.
Yeah, so I suppose if we think about it, all fabrics are man or woman made, aren't they? There aren't too many animals out there making fabrics, or maybe AI will do it. Yeah, so what she means by that is the fibre is a man-made fibre, so it is not a cotton or a wool or anything like that. So I imagine it's probably a polyester. Now then, I don't know how crinkly it is. I don't know what the fabric composition is. And so again, without seeing that, you give me tough questions tonight, all of you. You've been very sparing with the information. Okay, so I really haven't got it there to see, to know, but what I suggest you do, Hilary, is that you do a little bit of testing on some scrap and just iron some bits and see how it goes. I mean, I would be tempted not to press it very much, and without seeing it, I wonder that you should sew the seam and that you should overlock the seam together and that you should press generally towards the back. I think that if you do that, there's kind of less pressing, because you don't need to press the seam open and kind of get two sides of a seam to lie flat. You're just going to get it to need to lie flat to one side. I might kind of hover the iron over a little bit, and I might rely on a little bit of top stitching to hold the seam in place rather than too much pressing. So let's say, for example, the side seam, if that was a 5/8 of an inch seam, you sewed it, I might overlock it down to about let's say you've got an overlock, hopefully, or if not, you know, you can zigzag it or use one of the overlocking type stitches on your domestic sewing machine. Reduce the width of it to between 3/8 and half an inch, and then lightly press it towards the back, and then from the right side you might just do almost like an edge stitching, so not very far away from the actual seam. You might sew scant kind of 1/8 of an inch or something like that, which would be quite discreet. If you didn't mind making that stitching a little more obvious, you could do it say 1/4 of an inch away and make it almost like a top stitching, and if you did that, the seam's going to hold in place without you having to really press it and kind of flatten out the crinkle look of the fabric. So that's my best guess, not actually seeing what you've got, but that's what I would do a little bit of sample work on to try. So again, we would be pleased to hear how you get on with it and what you do, because all information is helpful to the rest of us.
Okay, thank you. So there's a little bit of consternation in the chat that Philippa might be watching to see how much of each of the classes people have watched. And certainly Debbie says that she thought she'd watched all of that class, so she's going back to watch it, I think. So we don't check on a regular basis, only when you ask questions.
Can I just say that if you think I'm spending my days sat at the computer looking at what you've watched, you are bonkers, because much as I love you all, that is not a useful way to spend my days. But the reason that I do go in is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm looking to see if you've got the class that you need, because if it is in your library, then the answers are going to be there, aren't they? Yeah, so I'm looking to see if you've got the class, and then of course I'm looking to see if you've watched it, because if you've asked me that question and you've got your class, what it suggests to me that you haven't watched it for a while, or you've only watched some of it. And if I can find that information, it is really helpful to us both, because I know that I don't need to try and do a really detailed explanation here, because you can go and watch it all in the comfort of your own home.
So Philippa, is it a good time to talk about the wedding that you...
Yeah, we can do, yeah.
So, well, I've got some pictures. Do you want me to put some pictures?
Yeah,
or do you
yeah.
want to give an introduction?
We started not being in my studio because I was making a dress, and some of you probably guessed that it was a wedding dress, but not for my family. It was for a lovely friend of mine, a young lady called Penny, and so it was not horribly complex in terms of difficulty of making, but there was a lot to put together with this dress. So we'll just show you a picture of Penny and her husband Chris, and she got married on the 26th of June, and there she is. She lives in near Ashford in Kent, and Penny is a textile artist, and she basically does designs which she screen prints onto fabrics, and she tends to use recycled French linen sheets. So because she lives fairly close to the south coast, she can get the ferry or the channel, the train across to France and go to the markets and pick up really lovely French sheets. There does seem to be a kind of a never-ending supply of antique French linen sheets, which we don't seem to get here. But if we could just go back to the picture. So Penny, she was helping, I was judging at Festival Quilts last year, and Penny and her mum Belinda often volunteer. Belinda has been my quilt angel on a number of occasions, but we've known each other a long time. And Penny was explaining that she was getting married and that she tried on conventional wedding dresses, and they just weren't her. She's only 4'10", and she said they made her just look ridiculous and fat, which I am sure was not true. But she had found a pattern that she really liked, and the pattern is by a company called Roberts Woods, and I got her to show me the pattern throughout the day. We were chatting at lunchtime as the judging process was going on, and I just thought, oh, that's really lovely, isn't it? I thought, well, you know, she's a really lovely girl and she hasn't got much money and she's a textile artist and everything. Well, I could make that for her. And so I said, well, I'll make your dress for you. It's like, and I didn't know, you know, you say that to somebody and they might think, oh, well, I don't actually want someone to make me a dress. I'd rather buy something. But anyway, she said that she would love me to make the dress. And so What Penny did was she printed all of the fabric that we use. So if we could go to the little detail, the first one, David, which is the dress in my studio. Now, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen there, what you can see there are some of the pattern pieces, not all of the pattern pieces. And so if you imagine you just took a shift dress and you drew lots of vertical lines and then parallel lines through it. Sorry, if we could just come back to me, David, thank you. And you split it all up into kind of slightly off, they're not quite squares because they flare out towards the bottom. So you had all of those, but then on each of the sides of those individual shapes, you drew a curved flange section. Yeah, that's what you were seeing on the pattern pieces. So sorry, I'm going to get you to go back. So what you do is you cut everything out. We very carefully cut everything out so that it was got heavier towards the bottom. We balanced all the pink and the red and the gold and everything. Cut all of these pieces out, but we didn't cut them to size initially. We sort of drew round them. Now what we did was, once we'd got them cut, just sort of roughly cut out with the motif in the correct place, we did the 7 stitch, my favorite 7 stitch, going backwards and forwards 7 times, 1/4 of an inch in from what was going to be the cut edge, and then cut them out with curvy pinking shears. So Penny Belinda spent 3 days with me here in February starting to do that, and then kind of left it all with me. We got most of the front cut out, and then I said to Penny, right, you take the back pattern. If you cut out and prep the back pieces, I will assemble it all. So you take each of the individual, sorry David, back to me, you take each of the individual sections and you put them wrong sides together. So I've got the 2 flanges and a seam line drawn. So the 2 flanges, you're going to sew it and then press the flange open. So you do that on all sides. And so have we got another picture, David? Yeah, so we'll just go to another one. And so when you've got that all done, what happens in some places is some of the motifs got disappeared. So you saw a little hair there, and so I used crayons to redraw in the nose and things like that. So you can see the edge of the sleeve there again on the left hand side. So you can see the little petal shape that is created. But all of those were flopping about. Now in the pattern it just says leave them, but because they were flopping, I thought at the end of a day of wearing it, it's going to look like a rag. So with the silk thread, right smack up to the 7 stitch, I machine stitched them down just to sort of hold the midpoint, and then I hand sewed sequins on each of the intersections, because I don't know if you can imagine, but you've got kind of quite a vulnerable raw edge there where all the flanges kind of come together. So I hand stitched those on, and then I created pattern pieces for the hem and for the sleeve, and made those scallop sections which were not in the pattern, and the hem had a big scallop section on, and I put a plique on there to balance it all, and I made a tie belt because we didn't do a single fitting. So if we could just go back to the kind of the final, or the picture of Penny wearing the dress. She came in February, we didn't do a single fitting, but it was an A-line shape, and I said, how long do you want it to be? She said, I don't care as long as you can see my shoes. All she was kind of interested in, really. And then so I did what I felt was proportionally right, and I made got a lovely piece of silk and bamboo fabric from a place called Beckford Silks, which is in the Cotswolds, and I made a little under dress to go underneath it, lovely little tie belt on it, and Peter, it took me a long time, didn't it? It did take a very long time, but there was never a point where it's like, oh my god, I've got to go and work on that. I just loved it, didn't I? I just enjoyed all of it. It was really, really, really good fun. And I got some labels from Kylie and the Machine, and so I put a care label in the bottom that it says, wash me when I'm dirty, use common sense, and then in the back of the neck I put 2 labels in, and one said hello gorgeous, and then the other one said made to party. So it was a delight. Now just before we move on from that, Penny, you can find Penny Jeffries, you can find her on Instagram, so just Google Penny Jeffries and you'll see the dress. But
how are you spelling Jeffries?
Jeffreis, I think. I mean, you'll find her anyway. You'll find it. But she didn't have fresh flowers at the actual wedding. What she made was a big range of all these incredible paper flowers in various sizes. This is one of the larger ones, and so she painted it all and printed it, and they're beautiful on both sides. And so all the wedding guests were given a flower to take away with them. And so this one says Philippa and Peter, but I don't really know why it says Peter on it, because I don't know really what his contribution was. But anyway, we got one of the lovely big flowers, and so Peter said to me yesterday, where's that flower going to live? And I'm just looking for the right place for my beautiful flower to live. So it was a delight from start to finish, and I thought she looked amazing, and it was a great pleasure. But don't ask me to make your wedding dress, because I'm not going to do any more for a little while. Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Janet Plummer. And Janet says, hi Philippa and David, I'm really pleased with the panel skirt that I've made from a very old pattern, albeit with a few tweaks here and there to include lowering the waistline. I find the skirt so comfortable to wear, and it works well for my shape and height. And even though I say it myself, it can be quite flattering. I cannot wear anything that is too tight around my waist, and the panels are very easy to adjust to the shape that I feel comfortable with. Having found the perfect fit and a flattering shape, I would like to use the same pattern again, and at the same time make the skirt look totally different. I'm thinking maybe pockets or some applique either round the bottom or perhaps one side. My query is regarding the panels, and I'll put the picture up. For instance, if I had to add pockets, would I ignore the fact that I have the panels and place my pockets over the seams wherever I want them, or with any enhancement should I be working within the panels at all times? I hope that makes sense. Many thanks, and thank you too for all your hard work. And that's from Janet.
So Janet, your skirt has 6 panels, so 3 panels in the front and 3 panels in the back. Now then, there are many ways you could approach this. So you could make a little pocket that the pocket opening was maybe a couple of inches down from the top of the waist, and you could have a little band on that or something like that, and so the pocket could be actually inserted into those seams. Yeah, so you would have nothing on the front panel, but in the 2 side panels, if you did 2 pockets, they would be set in that you would actually stitch them onto those panels before you assembled it. So that is one way that you could do it, and you would keep a very kind of smooth look to it. You can put a patch pocket on, 1 patch pocket, 2 patch pockets on. They can go on straight, they can go on at an angle. We have an excellent patch pocket class, which you do not have in your library because I checked. Okay, and can I just remind you all that the store is only open this month and next month. It will close at the end of August, so anything you want to buy, you need to buy it before the end of August. Don't forget, you will have access until at least the end of 2028, but you have got a limited window to actually purchase things. So you could angle them in all kinds of ways. Now what I always do when I'm making a pocket, and if you buy the class or have the class you'll know this, I kind of put my hand on a piece of paper and decide how big I want the pocket to be. It has to be big enough for your hand. You don't want a really small pocket opening. I would actually make the pocket, and then I would assemble the skirt front, and I would stand in front of the mirror, and I would just work out where I wanted the pocket to go. Do I want it on an angle? Do I want it straight? And so on. So I just think you put the pocket wherever you think it'll look nice and wherever you feel it's a useful place for you. There are other options. So in addition to the patch pocket class, there is another class on pockets inside seams with or without zips. So if you wanted a pocket that was kind of concealed, you could do that. There is a pocket that is incorporated with a zip into the closure. Then the advantage of having a zip in a pocket that is in a seam is that it will never gape because it's always closed up. So you're going to maintain that silhouette, and it's going to continue to be a flattering shape on you. So I think you should just do whatever you think. And again, you know, just look at garments online. You know, look at the things that you've got in your wardrobe, pockets that you like, and just you know, make half a dozen different skirts. They could all look completely different. Oh, and they're just little things as well. I mean, they've got some variety on the hem of that skirt there, but you know, you could put a different fabric on the bottom, and you could cut a 45-degree line so that you could have a kind of an angled section on each of the panels. You could do something like that. You could slash and spread even more so that you get kind of a godet effect. You could sew godets into the seams on the bottom. You could put pleats in it. There are myriad of things that you could do to really make that pattern very different. So keep us informed and show us what you do.
Thank you. Okay, the inseam pockets class is one of my favourite classes. It was a real revelation to me when Philippa was filming that, and when I was filming it, Philippa was demonstrating it, that you could actually fit pockets into the seams, and Philippa did zips and all sorts of that. It's a very good class. Okay, next question is from Hazel Kimber. And Hazel says, I've just been reviewing the full bust adjustment class and have a couple of questions. I know you add extra length at the front, so presumably you add it to the back too. But I was wondering what happens when it's a dress with a bodice attached to a skirt. I always have to add about an inch to the back waist length. So would I do 2 alterations, and in which order? Hope this makes sense. And then also, which pattern pieces do you alter for a full bust adjustment on a princess seam? So a few questions in there, Philippa. What do we think?
Right, okay, so well done for watching the class. I didn't check up on you. I'm not going to get anybody daring to look at anything again. Or maybe you're going to stay up all night watching your classes on the off chance that I do check, so that you think that, I think highly of you. I think highly of you all anyway. Right, okay, several things to address there. I'm going to struggle to do it all and keep it in my head. Right, now then, so a full bust adjustment as is shown in the class. You need to re-watch this, but basically you're going to slash and spread, and you're going to make 3 different slashes into a front bodice, okay? And so what you do, I have to get this right, I have to really think about it. When you are doing a full bust adjustment, basically what you are trying to do is increase the amount of fabric required for a full cup size, okay? So most patterns are created on either a B or a C cup, which is not what most of us are these days. People have fuller busts for all kinds of reasons. And so in addition to fabric in the horizontal plane, again, this is all explained, you also need extra fabric in the vertical plane. And so what you have to do is slash and spread. And so if I just take that, can you see this, David? You might have to, yeah. Okay, so I'm slashing and spreading, and am I doing that the right way? It's upside down and back to front, and I don't want to tell you wrong, but once you've slashed and spread, what I have done is I've increased fabric in the horizontal plane and I've increased length. But can you see that if I do that, what I have to do is I have to add fabric on the bottom here, don't I, to have a smooth line to join onto the skirt or whatever's going to happen there. And so what Hazel was asking was, if I'm adding length on the front, presumably I need to add it on the back, but I haven't added it on at the side seam, have I? Nothing has changed on the side seam, so it is only on that front bit. So normally you don't need to add anything onto the length of the back, although Hazel does say in her case she adds about an inch to the back bodice. Now I'm a little bit unsure if she's adding length to the back bodice and it goes all the way to the side seam. Whatever she adds at the side seam on the back has to be added to the side seam on the front, doesn't she? So what I mean by that is not adding width, is adding length. So if she's adding length to a back bodice, let's say she's adding, just for sake of argument, an inch at the centre back and it tapers to half an inch at the side seam, she's got to add that side seam onto the front, hasn't she? Else they're not going to actually sew together. Okay, so whatever addition or take away you do in terms of length on a side seam, it has to correspond on the front and the back, doesn't it? Else the two things aren't going to go together unless you really stretch and fudge it, which we're not recommending. Okay, so I hope, does that make sense? Yeah. I dread it when I'm doing anything like that and Peter stood there, because he'll start to kind of give his take on it, and he's never, oh, it's not true that he's never cut a pattern in his life. He did once make some jeans. Okay, right, now then, let me see if I can kind of get this right. So there's a question about the princess seam, and it is a little bit tricky because a princess seam can come either, the seam can come either from the armhole or it can come from the shoulder. They are both called princess seam, so it is a little bit tricky. And the whole point of a princess seam is that you can get rid of any darts at the side, because the shaping is created through the seams that run either from the underarm or from the shoulder. So again, can you see that, David? Yeah. There, okay. So this is a kind of flared style. So there's a centre front seam, but there's a flared skirt, centre front seam. Here is the princess seam. This is the side seam, and obviously that is the armhole. Now it very much depends on how much fabric you need to add. And when I was trained and we did flat pattern cutting, we would always make a toile. We would make our toile and we would kind of slash and spread or take tucks in the actual toile, rather than initially doing it just on the pattern. So if it wasn't very much and you needed to add just a little bit of extra fabric, and when I say a little bit, you could probably get away with, I would say, less than an inch really there, but you could just increase like so. Now can you see that, David? So
we can see where you're doing the pencil. We can't really see the detail too.
Right, okay, so from nothing at the armhole, because you're not trying to increase the circumference of the armhole, and then you would just come out and add a little bit more on at the fullest bust point. Now if your bust was fairly low, you'd be adding a little bit more lower down, but if it was kind of a fairly high bust, you wouldn't need to add much. And you can do the same on the other side, like so. Now that is going to give you more increased width, isn't it? But it is going to give you a bit more fabric in terms of the length, because where you've added on here, that line, that second line, is greater than the first pattern piece, like so. Yeah, so if there's not a lot to add, that is one way of going about doing that. So I'm just going to come on to another piece of paper. But if you want to, I'm not going to do this awfully well. I'm going to tell I'm not going to do it awfully well. If you want to slash and spread, basically the principles are the same as in the other actual video that we did. Now, because it's a full bust adjustment, I don't need to add anything to the skirt, do I? So I can cut it at the waistline there and get rid of that piece temporarily. It will be needed later on, okay? But this, particularly the focus, is in the side here. That is where I'm going to add, okay? And so I would be slashing and spreading in 4 places. I'm just going to move that one out of the way, okay? So what you need to determine is where the actual bust point is. So as if you were going to slash in the middle of a side dart, just about an inch or so beyond the bust point there, okay? So if I hold that up, can you see that? Okay, now another one that we do and is in the class is we are slashing straight up parallel to the center front from the actual waist upwards to the end of that first slash. Now when I do the slashing on the armhole in the class, it's about 2/3 of the way up from the underarm, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm actually going to cut that off because it's going to be easier to see. So I've got 3 pieces, but I'm also going to slash through about the bottom third, bit less of that center front. Now then, let me see if I can get this right. So we want to add here and add here this is a bit small, all of this. But if I just do that, what I end up with is too much at the waist. So the reason for slashing that bit is that I can taper that in, and then I can, sorry, okay, sticking to my sweaty fingers because it's so warm. I can then redraw that line in. So can you see I've added width here and I've added length there. Now then, what that would mean is that you would have a dart there to sew, unless that was a very small addition at that area there and you had a stretchy fabric, you would be able to ease that in. And if that goes back like so, then that can be fitted back on to there. Okay, so that is a very quick kind of brief overview, but hopefully that does make some kind of sense and gives you an understanding of where to go. So you do have an option, is if it is only a small amount, you can just draft it onto those two princess seams, or you can slash and spread. So hopefully that gives you a little more ammunition there for your pattern cutting alterations.
Thank you. Okay, right, we're going to skip the next session because we're missing some photographs and the lady concerned wasn't able to send them in to us at this point, so we'll deal with that question next month.
Jacket?
The pattern? We're running out of time, Philippa. So we can come back to it if we want to. So the question 9 is a question from Val, and Val says, I'm wondering if adding, say, 1/2 inch to one side of a centre back seam to make it vertical is an acceptable modification. I tried some stretch jeans a few months ago and discovered that the centre back seam was about 1/2 inch to the left of perpendicular and the side seams were vertical. I corrected it by adding that 1/2 inch to the left side at the centre seam and blended it to the crotch. I also needed a similar adjustment to the yoke. Sorry, I should have the picture up. There's the picture. I will try again and just add the 1/2 inch to the left backside seam. I'm wondering if I'm making things difficult by adding to the centre back. The zigzag line is the seam and the basted line is where the seam should be. My husband placed the measure strip. This was a twirl, and the final jeans in a less stretched denim looked good. I also have to make adjustments for a higher right hip. So Philippa.
Yes, so Val, I think this is a question for Sarah, and Sarah's book that she just recommended, which I just can't see what that she recommended earlier, is absolutely ideal for you. So none of us are perfectly symmetrical. One side will always be slightly different to the other, and that is you've done really well with that. So yes, what Val needs is, she is slightly bigger on one side of her bottom than the other side, and so the centre back seam is not falling at the visual centre back, and so it's exactly what she needed to do with that. And so really great, and between you and your husband you've done an excellent job there. What I would also say to you is that you have quite flat bottom cheeks as opposed to me that has very rounded bottom cheeks. You might just have a look at the trouser adjustment for flat bottom cheeks, because I'm not saying you want to, because I don't know what the rest of your trousers are like and how loose or fitted they are, but if you want to remove a little bit of the excess fabric from underneath your cheeks, there is an alteration there to show you how to do that. So that's really useful, not a long question, but really useful for people to know that is perfectly acceptable, and yeah, you've done all the right things, so well done.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Anne-Marie. And Anne-Marie it's another trouser question. Everything comes in threes, doesn't it, these days? So here's Anne-Marie's trousers. And Anne-Marie says, I've made these trousers and I can't tell you the brain work it took to make them. No pattern. She says she thinks she suffers from a kind of pattern dyslexia. I'm delighted with them as a first attempt. I wore them out and got some odd looks. I think the legs are too wide and too short, and maybe the fabric is too stiff. It's not light and floaty. So Anne-Marie's question is, can I just take in the width of the legs, or are there other considerations I'm not aware of? My feeling is that just running 2 lines of stitches down each leg is not the right approach. I have the paper pattern and a 12, but just don't know how to adjust things to change the leg width and length. I'm a pear shape and buying trousers is a nightmare. Thanks for any tips. And that's Anne-Marie, very hot and bothered in Burton-on-Trent.
So Anne-Marie, have you drafted your own trouser pattern? Because if you have done really, really well. And I question that people gave you some odd looks. Why would they give you odd looks? I think they're very stylish, but I do have a couple of things to say to you on them.
Maybe they were admiring looks.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because I have to say to you, and this is meant as a compliment, you have the shape of the moment. If you watch the Bezos wedding, any of the images like that, you have that perfect shape. So just go for it. You really should. Right, well, I'm going to say a couple of things to you. I'm unsure whether I think they're too short, really, but if you do think they're too short, you could add a cuff on the bottom, and you could make it look like a turn-up, or it could just look like a cuff and it'd just be a double-folded edition. What that would do is it would give them a bit more weight to them, and it would just help them hang a little bit better. I don't think that they are too wide. I do agree that your fabric is probably a little bit crisp, but I can see your shape under that, and I think that if you taper the legs in too much, they're not going to be as flattering. I think that once you've washed them 2 or 3 times, they'll be much softer, and I know it may not seem like quite the right thing, but I would be tempted to press a crease in them mid-front and mid-back, which will help them to hang differently, and that will be more flattering. Okay, so but if you do want to taper them in, basically I would just go back to your pattern and fold in. I mean, measure the circumference that you want at the lower edge and mark that equally, coming in equally on the inside and the outside legs, and then just fold that in and see what you look to it, and it should be a lovely smooth line on the inside and the outside. Okay, but what I think you actually need to do to your pattern is, if you look across your tummy, there is some pulling. So if we went back to Val's jeans, she's got kind of excess fabric because it's too loose. Anywhere you've got pulling and wrinkling, it is a little bit tight. So you've got a little bit of roundness to your tummy, and you want to make a very slight adjustment for the rounded tummy alteration, which is in the actual index. You will find it. Now it's only small, but it will completely get rid of that little bit of pulling off the front, and that will make them look much better. Your crotch height and everything looks really good. So this is what I'm going to say to you is, add on the bottom if you want to, press them differently, wash them 2 or 3 times. The next pair that you make, yes, lengthen them, but do a very slight adjustment for the rounded tummy, and then I think make them in a little bit more fluid fabric. And I really don't think that I would suggest that you alter the width of the actual leg. I think it looks really nice. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so next question is from Isabel Kershaw, and I think, Isabel, I saw that you commented, so I think you are watching live. And Isabel would like to know what the instructions might be to do a tie belt opening in a French seamed side seam, and we've got some pictures. I probably haven't got it teed up for Isabel, so let me pull that up.
Can I just pause you, David?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm very quickly going to address the jacket buttonhole pattern, issue, because what I can tell is there's a whole load of trauma with this.
You'll have to read the question then, yeah?
I will, yeah, and I don't want this poor lady to wait another month. So it's Helen McDonald. She made a jacket, it's a denim style jacket, and it's got a band on the bottom. And the band on the bottom, the buttonhole got made in the wrong direction. Now, Helen doesn't tell us why, but I can hear the pain in her voice, because she said that particular buttonhole was cut, brackets, not by me, I might add, but we won't go there. So there's a real story behind that. So on the band, I'm just going to say this to you.
We've got the image there, though.
Oh, fantastic. So that is the jacket, okay?
It's not her, I don't think.
No,
that's
but yeah. on the jacket, that bottom buttonhole should go horizontally, so I guess it got made vertically. So if you're not going to ever button it, it wants to be horizontal so that when it's buttoned, it won't pop undone. If you're not going to wear it closed up, does it actually matter is the first thing that I would say to you, okay? But if it does matter to you, I think it's a really easy fix, because what I can see on that bottom band of the jacket is there is a line of stitching kind of at the end of the facing. So here's the center front, all the buttons, there's a band, there's a line of stitching. The line of stitching goes right down to the lower finished edge. What I'm going to suggest you do is just unpick that final sort of 2-3 inches of the bottom, the corner where the buttonhole is, and replace that bit only, and have a seam in it, and put the seam in line with that line of stitching that we can see on the pattern. Nobody will ever know the difference, and that will sort it. I didn't want you to wait, Helen, and I apologize, David, but I really didn't want to have to wait a whole nother month for that. It's an easy fix, you can do it, trauma over. Right, now the last question.
Okay, so Isabel wants to do a belt opening in a French seam side seam. She wants to know if Philippa's done this. I don't think we did it in any of the classes. If not, how would you do it? This is the Style Arc Naomi. So here's the image. Style Arc Naomi woven dress. The side opening near the bottom of the bodice seam will be formed into a channel opening once the skirt is attached higher up than the bodice. And if we look down, we've got a picture, if I can find out how to change it. There we've got the scissors showing the hole, I'm guessing. So Philippa, how would she go about doing that?
I have 3 options for you. So just to recap quickly, a French seam, you start with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You put the 2 pieces of fabric wrong sides together. You sew 3/8 of an inch. You then trim down to less than 1/4 of an inch. You then put the other way round. What did I say? You put wrong sides together, you put right sides together, you sew a 1/4 inch seam, so your raw edge gets encased in the second line of stitching. So if you want to leave an opening in a seam, that leaves you with a bit of an issue. How would you go about doing it? I have 3 possible ones. They are not the only ones. So the first one is, I had a straight line, just a straight piece of fabric, the side seam in this case, for example. I worked out, looked at the pattern, where does my opening need to be, and I did a tiny little press back, a single thickness, starting at nothing and then going to a generous 1/4 of an inch in the middle and then back to nothing, and I pressed that in once, and then I pressed it a second time. So is it going to be a little bit difficult for you to see, but there is my straightness, there is my straightness, there is my opening. I would do a straight stitch on that second edge to hold that in place, and then I would just sew the seam as normal. So that is one possibility. The second possibility is to take your piece of fabric, and where you want the opening to be, snip 5/8 of an inch straight at right angles from the raw edge, the side seam. So you've got this little flange, and press it twice so that you have this, and then do a line of stitching to hold back that little pressed hem. Then you can sew as normally. Obviously you do this on both sides. You can do your French seam and you will have that opening, but what you will have is just a little bit of a raw edge on the top and bottom of the folded section that you have just pressed back into place. Does that make sense? Yeah. Speak to me, yeah, anybody? Okay, or alternatively, you can put a little facing on. So here is the side seam. Now I have sewn a little kind of box. So I've got a facing piece of fabric here, which I haven't finished the outer edge, but you would, and I've gone 5/8 of an inch in from the raw edge. That's the depth of my seam allowance. I've stitched along parallel to the raw edge for as long as I want the opening to be, and then I've gone back to the raw edge, and so then I am going to reduce the seam allowance down to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to snip into the corners, I would then take that to the iron and press it like so, and then once I've done that on both sides, I will have that little opening. Then I can do my seam allowance, my French seam as normal, and this bit will stay open. So 3 options on that. I hope you got all of those. Easy peasy, choose whichever one you like the most.
Okay, so we've got the winners now, and Philippa, you can deal with question 12 at the same time if you'd like to. So, Peter.
Right, okay, it isn't really a question. Oh, you just can't help yourself, can you, Peter?
No, just have a look at those there.
Red currants and black currants. I have a thing about allotment. I probably said it on Tuesday. Allotment stuff coming in old yogurt pots. I think old yogurt pots are horrible. Beautiful fruit, Peter.
Yes.
The fruits of your labours.
Yeah, never mind the yogurt pots.
Okay, so before you read those out, Peter, it isn't really a question. It's Sue Godney, who is always unbelievably complimentary and kind and generous in all her comments about the classes, what we do here at Garment Makers, and also Peter, you. Can I just say congratulations to Peter. I saw on Google the amazing Bolt of Lightning RAF Burton Wood sculpture designed by Philippa Naylor. What a perfect piece of work to honour Burton Wood RAF. It will look spectacular once erected. Can't wait to see it. What a clever, talented person you are. You've got a very short amount of time just to tell people what it is.
Well, the thing we can do is, I think all are welcome at the inauguration ceremony.
Sue will be there.
Which will be the 12th of August.
At what time?
That's a Tuesday, 12th of August. I don't know the time. I haven't been given the time. I would have just guessed.
We can tell them next month.
That it'll be 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It won't be early in the morning, will it? It's going to be midday. Yeah. Right.
So tell them what it is.
Oh, right. RF Burton Wood. It's actually the runway is covered by a section of the M62 goes smack over where there was a World War II runway. RF Burton Wood was originally an RAF station. It was handed over to the Americans, given the wonderful acronym BAD 1, which stood for Base Air Depot. And BAD 1 was the biggest airfield in Europe in the Second World War, and something like 50,000 Americans worked there. And it continued to be an American air base until about 1965. So it was part of the Berlin airlift, and it continued in the Cold War as well. And yeah, this huge air base. It's now just become a housing development, and there are these huge, what they call big sheds, you know, like Amazon warehouse and things at the side of the M62. And part of that development is they need a piece of public art. And very fortunately, in their wisdom, they chose me. So the reason this plane is, I've chosen this plane, it's what is called a P-38 Lockheed Lightning, because this airbase repaired over 1,000 P-38 Lockheed Lightnings, which was one of America's most successful World War II aircraft. Is that all we need to know?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a sculpture, it's a public sculpture,
Yeah.
but we
And
now need to know the importance.
It's 22 metres tall, and as we keep plugging.
Oh, well done.
All right, yeah, it's 22 metres tall and is 2 metres. We used to say 1 metre, but it's now 2 metres taller than the Angel of the North.
Oh, 2 metres, isn't it? Yeah.
Eat your heart out, Anthony Gormley.
The Angel of the North is a sculpture in the north of England, if people who are in America
it's probably
don't
Britain's
know.
most famous public sculpture.
Not for long, Peter.
Yeah, not for long.
Yeah.
We're going to be there. Provided we can get it to sit on those pillars. There was a technical problem with it yesterday, but we'll sort it. 2 winners, Gillian Buckley and Jenny Lloyd.
So Gillian and Jenny, well done to both of you.
Is
David,
my work here done?
never, Peter, never,
okay.
never.
I want to know, why was that button cut in the wrong direction? I suspect it's the husband myself.
Well, speaking as a husband, is that something husbands do?
Yeah, I often sneak in at night into that studio and mess your work up.
Sorry, Jenny and Gillian, congratulations on winning our little lucky bag prize this month. David will get in touch with you to find out your postal address and we'll get those sent off to you. Thank you for all your lovely questions. We didn't think we'd have enough for this evening, and yet again we have run over time, so I apologise for that. We will be back with you at the end of July, so last week of July we'll be back again, so store your questions up, and if you've got any comments on anything from this time that you worked on over the next few weeks, please do let us know, because it's always lovely to get the follow-up and hear about your successes and how you managed to fix things and what was helpful to you. And thank you to Sarah for your recommendation on that book. I am going to buy a copy, so is probably half the world tonight, so there'll be none left and they'll be going up in price hugely. From Peter,
Bye bye.
and from David,
Bye.
and from me, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.